right?
He's going to call it in that his shop's been with.
Yep, and then
So
I know
right away in the morning.
and then I know who was here, and I can
I don't have to help you with your investigation.
Perfect.
It's on my rights.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna check and make sure. Watch out.
But no, I don't.
Don't
No, I don't.
touch
Give,
me.
I don't
Back
give you
up.
consent. I don't
This
give you
isn't-
consent.
This isn't your
How?
personal
How
property.
not? What? How? You don't have the right to do this.
I do.
No, you don't. What are you going to check for, dude?
Who else is here? Just
Nobody.
you? Okay.
Dude, you don't have the right to do this. Get out of here.
It's not your personal property. I'm gonna make sure nothing looks burglarized in here.
Oh my God. You don't have the right to do this.
I
dude.
absolutely do, sir.
Nothing is burglarized.
Okay.
Get out of here. I did not give you permission to be in here.
Well, you don't have to give me permission.
Yes.
Effects, the Supreme Court has repeatedly held that business premises are protected by the Fourth Amendment. For instance, in the 1967 case of C versus City of Seattle, the Supreme Court determined that, quote, the businessman, like the occupant of a residence, has a constitutional right to go about his business free from unreasonable official entries upon his private commercial property, and that, therefore, now quoting again, the basic component of a reasonable search under the Fourth Amendment, that it not be enforced without a suitable warrant procedure, is applicable to business as well as to residential premises. It is important to note that, as the Supreme Court summarized in the 1987 case of New York versus Berger, quote, the court long has recognized that the Fourth Amendment's prohibition on unreasonable searches and seizures is applicable to commercial premises as well as to private homes. An owner or operator of a business thus has an expectation of privacy in commercial property, which society is prepared to consider to be reasonable. An expectation of privacy in commercial premises, however, is different from, and indeed less than, a similar expectation in an individual's home. Nonetheless, much of the case law involving the so-called reduced expectation of privacy in business premises applies to administrative inspections designed to enforce regulatory statutes, not traditional police searches conducted for the gathering of criminal evidence. And since Officer Crawford was engaged in a criminal investigation and not an administrative inspection when he entered the business premises, which at the time were not open to the public, it is likely that a court would conclude that his search violated the Fourth Amendment, unless he had so-called exigent circumstances to enter the property without a warrant. The Supreme Court cautioned in the 1984 case of Welsh versus Wisconsin that, quote, exceptions to the warrant requirement are few in number and carefully delineated, and that the police bear a heavy burden when attempting to demonstrate an urgent need that might justify warrantless searches. The court then noted that it had only recognized a few such emergency conditions, such as the hot pursuit of a fleeing felon, the potential destruction of evidence, and an ongoing fire. Similarly, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals stated in the 2008 case of U.S. versus Williams, quote, exigent circumstances are present where lives are threatened, a suspect's escape is imminent, or evidence is about to be destroyed. And in the Poe case we discussed earlier in this episode, the Eighth Circuit noted that, quote, a legitimate concern for officer safety or the safety of others may constitute an exigent circumstance, and a warrantless entry into a residence may be justified if an officer has a reasonable fear of harm. Now, although there was clearly no ongoing emergency or a threat to anyone's safety, Officer Crawford could potentially argue that he was concerned that Mr. Clems could destroy some sort of evidence inside the premises. However, as the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals explained in the 1990 case of U.S. versus Munoz, quote, in addition to showing exigent circumstances, the government must show that the officer had probable cause to search the apartment. And as we mentioned earlier in this episode, it is doubtful that Officer Crawford even had reasonable suspicion, let alone